Oh, all righty. This is not ESPN's 30 for 30, but however, it is my 98 for 98. 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants. I'm going to try to get it done in 98 days. Probably not going to happen in 98 days. However, I'm trying to get it done before the beginning of the football season, which starts on September 10th against the Cowboys. And so we're forging ahead. We're at season number 40, halfway into the 60s. Still got my spider senses are telling me still got 58 more seasons to go. We got a long way to go, but we're at season number 40, 1964, and 64 was a special season because it was the start of I don't know if anybody calls it or whatever. I call it the wilderness years. I think I heard it someplace else called that because it was just the start of the wilderness where there was like nothing. From 1964 to 1980, the 17 seasons there was only 2 winning seasons. The Giants had 3 seasons where they were 500, 65, 67, 68. And then had 2 winning seasons, 70 and 72. 70, they were 9-5, 72, they were 8-6. But other than that, they had 2 winning seasons from 64 to 80. No playoffs. 70, 72, they came close. 70, if they had won their final game of the season against the Rams, they would have won the division and made the playoffs. However, the Rams had other ideas, and the Rams beat them 31-3. But I mean, it was a shame because, and it was just like, well, you don't want to sudden. I mean, the way it came on, yeah, because the Giants had gone to the championship game. It's 56, 58, 59, 61, 62, 63. Then all of a sudden, 63, they're in a championship game. That's one of my missing rings seasons. I don't want to go into it, but they should have won that championship game. But then you go from a championship game, and then the next season you're 2-10-2. I mean, that's the sudden part. Not so sudden because they started trading away some of the guys. Ali Sherman said, the guys were getting older, and a lot of them were. After 64, Wyatt Tittle retired. Alex Sherman, Ali Sherman. I wish he retired, but Alex Webster, my bad. Frank Gifford retired. Andy Robustelli retired. They traded away Sam Huff. They traded away Dick Modulewski. Roosevelt Brown, quite possibly. You can argue the best offensive lineman the Giants ever had. And by the time Andrew Thomas is done, he might have something to say about that. But also, you got Mel Hine in there, who 1938 won the MVP of the league as a center. Kind of hard to do. But, so I mean, the Giants were getting older. And so they started trading away some of their, after the 62 season, they traded away Rosie Greer, the defensive tackle. They traded him to the Rams, where he was there for 4 seasons. He became part of the fearsome foursome. But, I mean, so they started trading away some guys who were getting older. Some of the guys who were older started retiring. And their problem is that they couldn't draft. They drafted basically absolutely. They drafted in 1963 Homer Jones, and there was 20 rounds in the draft, and the Giants in 1963 in the 20th round. Well, actually, you got to give it a little credit. The Giants drafted a future Hall of Famer, Buck Buchanan, in the 19th round in 1963. However, he was taken in the first round of the AFL draft by the Kansas City Chiefs, where he wound up playing his entire career. So the Giants did draft a Hall of Famer, all right, in 1963. However, he never played for the Giants. So the Giants in the 20th round took him to the 20th round to basically draft anybody who was any good. They took Homer Jones, who quite possibly, if his knees or knees, held up and he could have had a somewhat lengthy career, he quite possibly would have been a Hall of Famer. But other than that, the Giants, the draft were just absolute garbage. So they're trading away their guys, and in return, not really getting much of anything. They traded away Dick Modzelewski for a wide receiver, and the wide receiver that they got in 1964 had 12 catches for him. I mean, they traded away Sam Huff for some garbage. I mean, just, as I said, they just did not replace them with good draft picks. So their cupboard was getting bare. I mean, they just, after a while, all their star players from the 50s and the early 60s, it took them all these championship games. They started trading them away, or they started retiring, and the Giants couldn't replace them. So the Giants started stinking, they did. The only way they were able, a lot of times, able to get any good players in was by trading. And they got Fran Tarkenton in 1967. They also traded for Del Schaffner, who was a very good wide receiver. But, their drafting was just horrible. So let's start with the 1964. So it was the 40th season for the Giants. So therefore, it's the 45th season for the NFL. The Giants started in 1925. NFL started in 1920, where the Akron Indians took home the championship in 1920. How about that, huh? So let's see, the 1964 season. 1964 NFL season was the 45th regular season of the National Football League. Before the season started, NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle reinstated Green Bay Packers running back Paul Hornung and Detroit Lions defensive tackle Alex Karras, who had been suspended for the 1963 season due to gambling. Beginning this season, the home team in each game was allowed the option of wearing their white jerseys. Since 1957, league rules had mandated that the visiting team wear white and the home team wore colored jerseys. The NFL also increased the regular season roster limit from 37 to 40 active players, which would remain unchanged for a decade. The season ended with the Cleveland Browns shut out the Baltimore Colts 27-0 in the 1964 NFL championship game. The game was tied 0-0 at halftime, and then Cleveland erupted in the second half. The draft. Speaking of the draft, I'm going to go over all the Giants. Actually, for the Giants, this was the year of the running back. They took 25% of their picks were running backs. I mean, it just goes to show you how things have changed. And their first pick, and I'm going to go over this. Their first pick was an absolute freaking bozo. What a loser. Oh, my goodness. But we'll go over that in a minute. 1964 NFL draft was held on December 2nd, 1963 at Chicago's Sheraton Hotel and Towers. With the first pick, the San Francisco 49ers selected Dave Parks from Texas Tech University. Not a bad pick. That wasn't a bad pick. Active roster changes. Prior to the season, the NFL club owners voted to increase the regular season roster limit from 37 to 40 active players, the largest in league history up to that point. This standard would remain in place until the 1974 season, which I think it went up to 43 players. New uniform rules. 1964 season introduced a noteworthy change in uniform rules. While the league had dictated since 1957 that the home team must wear a colored jersey and the visitors must wear a white one, teams were now given the option of wearing their white jerseys at home. As a result, the Browns, who wore white at home before 1957, and the Cardinals and Colts, except for one home game, which was originally scheduled to be an away game, Cowboys, Rams, Redskins, Steelers for one game versus Rams, and Vikings, except for most of one game in which the Lions forgot to bring their blue jerseys. That's funny. did so, while the rest reverted to home colors the following year. The Cardinals would not wear red at home until 1966. The Rams would not do so again until 1972. The Browns only once until 1975, and the Cowboys, aside from an unwilling use of their blue tops as the home team in Super Bowl V, had since continuously worn white at home. The Steelers would wear white at home for most home games from 1966 until 1969, the first year of head coach Chuck Noll, but would not wear white as the home team until Super Bowl in 2005, and have not worn white in a game in Pittsburgh since the Three Rivers Stadium opened in 1970. The Giants also wore white at home in 1967. So I'm not sure. 66, they wore blue at home. 67, they wore white at home. 68, they started wearing blue at home again. Who knows? The conference races. The Western Conference race started with the Baltimore losing its opener 34-24. After that, the Colts went on an 11-game winning streak, taking the lead on October 4th with their 35-20 win over the Rams and clinching a spot in the title game on November 22nd. The Eastern Conference, the Browns and the St. Louis Cardinals played to a 33-33 tie on September 20th and were both 4-1-1 after 6 games. In Week 7, Cleveland beat New York 42-20, while St. Louis fell to Dallas 31-13. When the Cardinals beat the Browns 28-19 in Week 13, they were only a game behind and needed a win and a Cleveland loss to have a chance for a playoff. However, the Browns were playing the Giants, so they demolished the Giants. So Cleveland won 36-34 in Philadelphia. So let's say. So Cleveland finished at 9-3-2. So the Browns were playing the Giants. So if the Giants were to win, which obviously they didn't, they got annihilated 52-20. But if the Giants would have won, the Browns would have wound up 9-4-1, and the St. Louis Cardinals would have won the division. So the Cardinals were right there, but they just fell a little bit short. So. Let's see here. Postseason. There was the championship game, which I'll go over. The Browns won 27-0. The playoff bowl. The St. Louis Cardinals beat the Green Bay Packers 24-17 at the Orange Bowl. The playoff bowl was between the conference runners-up for third place in the league. So the Browns were first place, the Colts were in second place, and the Cardinals were third place because they were the playoff bowl winners. This was its 5th year, and it was played a week after the title game. Most valuable player went to Johnny Unitas, the quarterback of the Colts. Let's see here. The coach of the year went to Don Shula of the Baltimore Colts. Let's see. Green Bay was awarded the playoff berth for the Western Conference by outscoring them. Oh, okay. In the Western Conference, to go to the playoff bowl, the Packers wound up 8-5-1. The Vikings were 8-5-1 as well too. However, the Packers were what it says here. The Packers were awarded the bid to go to the playoff bowl, so they were awarded second place because they outscored the Vikings. Excuse me, 65-37 in their 2 meetings. But this would also be the last time that the Packers would find themselves in second place. Starting in 1965, 66, 67, the last 3 seasons that Vince Lombardi coached for the Packers would win the conference and the championship and the first 2 Super Bowls. So this is the last season the Packers would find themselves in second place. They had a lot of injuries in 1964, which really hampered them. Let's see here. So we're going to go to the draft here. Just as she goes to show you. I mean, just the garbage the Giants drafted. First round, the Giants drafted Joe Don Looney, a back. Once again, I'm going to go over the backs here once again. The year of the back for the Giants. But they drafted Don Looney out of Oklahoma. He was a very, very good talent. He was a very good back, a lot of talent. Just he didn't want to listen to anybody. He had his own rules. I think he either missed team meetings or he came late. He wouldn't adhere to the Giants wanted guys to wear certain clothes and stuff like that. And of course, the idiot that Don Looney was, he didn't want to adhere to that. So after 20, the Giants drafted him, and basically after 28 days, they got rid of him. The first round pick, they traded him to the Baltimore Colts. Such a absolute loser. What an absolute moron. So they took Don Looney with pick number 12, and he was with the Giants for, I think, 28 days. In the second round, the Giants took Steve Thurlow, a running back from Stanford. So 2 rounds, 2 backs. Round 3, Giants didn't have a pick in every round. Round 3, they didn't have a pick. Round 4, they took round 4, they took Matt Snell. Guess what position he plays? Running back. But he didn't play for the Giants. He wound up playing for the Jets. Good for him, because they wound up winning the Super Bowl. They wound up winning Super Bowl 3. So the Giants took 3 picks. All 3 of them were running backs. They also took George Seals, a defensive end from Missouri, who had a lengthy career in the NFL, but none of it was with the Giants. The Giants drafted him in 1964. 1964, he wound up playing with the Redskins, and then he played for the Bears, and then he finished up his career in 1973 with the Kansas City Chiefs. So he played for 10 years, but not one of them was with the Giants. Once again, absolute garbage pick, not because the player was garbage, but because he never wound up playing for the Giants. Let's see here. Round 5. So the Giants took 3 backs so far. They took Tony DiMedio, a tackle from Westchester. Round 6, Giants took Henry Shickley, a quarterback from Wichita State. Garbage. Round 7, they took Roger Anderson, a tackle from Virginia Union. Garbage. Round 8, they took Gary Wood, a quarterback from Cornell. Garbage. I mean, he played a little bit for the Giants. He wasn't a good quarterback. But then again, he was in round 8. Round 9, the Giants took Mickey Bitsko, a linebacker from Dayton. Garbage. Round 10, the Giants took Jim Morn, a tackle from Idaho. Garbage. So I'm not going to go, but there was their first 10 picks. They took 3 backs. Let's see here. All right. I think it was at least 5 backs they took in the draft here. 13. No. Round 14. Round 14, they took a halfback. So that's 4 backs. Round 15. Nope. Took a guard. Round 16, took a tackle. Round 17, took a tackle. I know they got another. Okay, round 18, they took Jim Garrett, a halfback from Grambling. So that's 5 backs. Out of 18 rounds, they took 5 backs. They took, in round 19, they took Frank Kennard, a halfback from Mississippi. That's their 3,482nd pick that they've taken from Mississippi. They take a ton of players from Mississippi. So that's 6 backs they've taken so far in 19 rounds. And then in round 20, did they take? Nope, they took a tackle. Okay, so they took 6 running backs, halfbacks, backs, running backs, whatever you want to call them, 6. And none of them were good. Oh, my goodness. Now, the problem was, amongst many, a lot of guys were getting old. And they didn't, and anybody they brought in or drafted or whatever to replace them were just garbage. Absolute, pretty much, almost all of them were pretty much garbage. The Giants in 1963 averaged like 32 points a game. 1964, they went down to 17 points a game. So basically, their scoring total basically went down in half. They gave up 20 points a game in 1963, which was pretty good. But then they gave up 28 points a game, 1964. So they gave up 8 more points per game, and they went down 15 points in offensive production. So 15-8, so 23 points to the bad. They went in 1964. They went up 2-10-2. I mean, just absolutely horrible. Y.A. Tittle, his final season, he threw 36 touchdown passes in 1963. In 1964, he threw 10. He threw 10 interceptions. He had 22 interceptions. 10 touchdowns, 22 interceptions. So it just was not, Gary Wood, the quarterback that they drafted, he started 3 games. He was 1-2-0. It was not really a very good quarterback. The Giants, their running game, they averaged 3 yards a carry, 3.2 yards a carry. They gave up 4.1 yards a carry. They only scored 12 rushing touchdowns. It was just overall, it was just not good at all. Not good at all. The only good part on the defense was, let's see, anybody? Jim Cat Cabbage, he had 13.5 sacks in 14 games. I mean, I tell you what, Jim Cat Cabbage, let me see. These are unofficial stats here. He was their end. He wound up with 91.5 sacks. But his first 4 seasons, they don't have it included in here. So for his career, he wound up with well over 100 sacks. Well over 100. But, of course, they weren't official stats then at the time. But the Giants, once again, as always, they always started their first, at least anywhere, except for 1961 or 1962. The Giants always started their first at least 2 and up to the first 4 games on the road. Since they're sharing a baseball stadium with the baseball team, they wanted to make sure that the season was over with, I believe, before they went in and started chewing up the field. So here they started the first 2 games of the season on the road. And actually 4 of their first 5 were on the road. Their first home game was on September 25th. But anyway, the first game of the season, they lost 38-7 to the Eagles in Philadelphia on September 13th. Week number 2, the following Sunday, September 20th, in Pittsburgh, they lost 27-24. Now, that was the game where it's a very famous picture of Y.A. Tittle. He's on his knees. He's got his hands on his knees, and he's got blood coming down his forehead. He got he was trying to throw like a screen pass or something. He was in his if he wasn't in his end zone, he was like right at the goal line or something like that. And he wound up getting tackled, and he wound up getting flipped over on or whatever. His helmet split, and he wound up cutting his forehead, and he wound up with blood. He got really badly injured in that game. I'm not exactly sure of all. I'd have to type it up and everything and look at all the injuries he had and everything. But that was a very, very famous picture. A very, very famous picture. Let me see here if I can pop it up here. I gotta let's see. 1964. Following the 1964 Tittle's final season, the Giants went 2-10-2, the worst record in the 14 leagues. In the second game of the year against Pittsburgh, he was blindsided by defensive end John Baker. The tackle left Tittle with a crushed cartilage in his ribs, a cracked sternum, and a concussion. However, he played in every game the rest of the season, but was relegated to a backup role later in the year. After throwing only 10 touchdowns with 22 interceptions, he retired after the season at age 39. Saying rookie quarterback Gary Wood not only took my job away, but started to ask permission to date my daughter. Oh, my goodness. Over 17 seasons as a professional, Tittle completed 2,427 out of 4,395 passes for 33,000 yards, 242 touchdowns, and 248 interceptions. He also rushed for 39 touchdowns as well. He was a true warrior. So in that game, in the second game of the season, Wyatt Tittle got blindsided. He just flipped him over or whatever. His helmet got cracked. I believe his helmet is in the Hall of Fame with the crack in it. But I believe because the helmet cracked, put a cut into his head, and it's a very famous picture. He's on his knees in the end zone. He's got blood coming down his forehead. So he wound up with a concussion. He had a cracked sternum, and he had crushed cartilage in his ribs. Unbelievable. And yet he still played every game for the rest of the season. Just truly amazing. So the Giants lost that one 27-24. Now they're 0-2. Somehow the next week they wound up beating the Redskins at home 13-10. So now they're 1-2. But that was the highlight of their pretty much the highlight of their season. The following week on the road, they lost to Detroit on Sunday, October 4th. They lost to the Lions 26-3. Then they tied the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. They tied them on Sunday, October 11th. They tied 13-13. So with the tie to Dallas, the United Giants are 1-3-1. The following week on Sunday, October 18th, home against Philly, they lost 23-17. Now they're 1-4-1. The following week in Cleveland on Sunday, October 25th, they lost 42-20. Now they're 1-5-1. Their final win of the season came the following week on Sunday, November 1st. They played the St. Louis Cardinals. They won 34-17 at home. So now they're 2-5-1. And that was pretty much about it for the season. The following week, the Cowboys came to town. The Giants lost on Sunday, November 8th to the Dallas Cowboys 31-21. The following week on Sunday, November 15th in St. Louis, the Giants tied the Cardinals 10-10. Now the Giants are 2-6-2. Giants would wind up losing their final 4 games. The following week, the Steelers would come to town in Yankee Stadium on Sunday, November 22nd, and the Steelers would beat the Giants 44-17. Now the Giants are 2-7-2. The following week, the Giants would play their final road game of the season. On Sunday, November 29th in Washington, they lost to the Redskins 36-21. Now the Giants are 2-8-2. The following Sunday, on Sunday, December 6th, at home against the Vikings would win 30-21. And the final game of the season was on Saturday, December 12th. They played the Cleveland Browns at home, and they lost 52-20. To finish the season at 2-10-2. Absolutely horrible. Absolutely. That was their first losing season since 1953. So, but the losing seasons would come a lot more often. I mean, it took them from 53 to 64 to have a losing season. But after this, from 1964 to 1980, they had a losing record in 64, 66, 69, 71, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, and 80. All losing records. Absolutely horrible. The wilderness years. Just, I mean, as I said, a lot of the guys were getting old. Let's see, the Giants had, let's see here. Well, they had a young Homer Jones in there who only played 3 games. But, I mean, Frank Gifford was 34. Wyatt Tittle was 38, soon to turn 39. Alex Webster was 33. So a lot of these guys that, that the Giants relied on, in their championship years were just getting old. Let's see. I'm trying to look here. Same thing with some of their old defensive players. Tom Scott, their linebacker, he was 34. Andy Robustelli, this would be his final season. He was 39. Let's see here. Also, they traded away Sam Huff. They traded away Dick Modulewski. Don Chandler, who was a very good punter, they wound up trading him away, not right, but soon to the Green Bay Packers. So I mean, it was definitely a changing of the guards without question. big time changing of the guards for the Giants. And as I said, due to their horrible drafting, absolute horrible drafting. What's up, Teddy? They just couldn't replace anybody. It was unbelievable, horrible. Giants cards tied help Cleveland win the East. Yep. Yeah, it was amazing. The Cardinals were right there. The Cardinals were right there. Oh, yeah. Yep, Cardinals beat the Yankees. Yeah, I think the Yankees lost back-to-back. I think that they lost in 1963. The Yankees lost in 63 to the Dodgers. The Dodgers swept them, I think, 4-0. And in 1964, they lost to the Cardinals. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was what you were pointing out, that, the Cardinals needed a win against the Giants, and they wound up tying them 10-10. I mean, the Cardinals were at home, too. I mean, if the Cardinals had won that one, they would have had an extra win, and they might have been tied for first place. Somehow the Giants only held the Cardinals. The Cardinals only had 143 yards of offense in that game. It's kind of shocking. I mean, the Giants outgained the Cardinals in that game. So it's just shocking how the Cardinals couldn't beat the Giants. If the Cardinals could have beat the Giants in that game, they might have a tie for the they would have a tie for the conference, the division, the lead, and they would probably wind up playing a playoff game to see who would go to the championship game. Yes, I mean that's one of those things. On any given Sunday, you just never know. You never know, and that one game there, the one game wound up costing them. They were at 10-10. Let's see here. The Giants went ahead 7-0. Then the Cardinals kicked a field goal to make it 7-3. Then the Cardinals scored a touchdown, and in fourth quarter, Don Chandler from the Giants kicked a 21-yard field goal to tie the game at 10-10. The Cardinals couldn't move the ball against the Giants. I mean, unbelievable. But that tie right there, I mean, you're absolutely right. That tie wound up costing because if the Cardinals could have beat the Giants that day, the Cardinals would have been 10-3-1. The Browns would have been 10-3-1. They would have played a playoff game to see who would win the Eastern Conference, to see who would go to the championship game. And not only that, but the Eastern Conference hosted the championship game. So the Browns hosted the championship game. So if the Cardinals could have beaten the Giants that day in that game, instead of tying them, Cardinals would have been 10-3-1. Browns would have been 10-3-1. They would have played a playoff game to see who'd go to the championship game. And if the Cardinals would have won that playoff game, they would have hosted the championship game. Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, any given Sunday, I mean, that one tie, you're absolutely right. That one tie cost the Cardinals a chance to win the conference. That was huge. And 10-10. I mean, unbelievable. Against at home. 10-10 against the worst team in football, because the next worst team was the San Francisco 49ers. They were 4-10. Let's see. The Giants gave up 399. The Giants gave up the most points in all of football that year. They were absolutely horrible. The Giants. Let's see here. Let's see. The Giants scored 17.2 points per game. They scored 241 points. That was 13th out of 14 teams. So they were the second worst team as far as scoring points. But points against, they gave up 399. They gave up 28.5 points a game, which was the worst. And the Cardinals couldn't even beat them at home. Just goes to tell you. All right, let's see. Like with the Giants here, the New York Giants decided to trade away star defensive player Sam Huff, a middle linebacker, to the Washington Redskins. They received young players being defensive end Andy Stanckula and halfback Dick James in return. This trade had easily become one of the most controversial and shocking trades in Giants history. The two young players had brought youth, but made a little impact to the team. Yep. Oh, yeah. I mean, they just, New York Giants have selected 20 picks. Only 12 of them. See, this was my point. if you look for the Giants, the 1964 Giants season under Wikipedia, it'll say NFL draft. New York Giants have selected 20 draft picks in 20 rounds in the draft, with only 12 of them playing at all during their careers. So basically 8 of them never even played in the NFL or played at all. All 12 players would be considered rookies their first year playing. One of the rookies, Lou Slabby, inherited the middle linebacker position that was left by Sam Huff, only starting for one of his few years in the league. But some of the players, didn't even play for the Giants. They played, like Matt Snell played for the AFL. A couple of the guys didn't even want to play for the Giants. It just their picks were just horrible, absolutely horrible, and they can never, replace the cupboard that was getting bare. So the 1964 NFL championship game, here we go, was the 32nd annual championship game held on December 27th at Cleveland Stadium in Cleveland, Ohio, with an attendance of 79,544. This was the first NFL title game to be televised by CBS. The game marked the last championship won by a major league professional sports team from Cleveland until 2016, when the Cavaliers won the NBA Finals. Through 2022, this is the Browns' most recent league title. Yeah, so you got the Browns, you got to go back to 1964. The Detroit Lions, you got to go back to 1957. The Cardinals, you got to go back to 1947. Long time for the Cardinals. But the game, it was 0-0 at halftime. All the scoring, the Browns wound up winning 27-0. But all the scoring was in the second half. All the scoring was in the third and fourth quarter. Gary Collins, for the wide receiver for the Browns, scored 3 touchdown passes. Let's see here. Yeah, it was nothing at halftime. It was just, and as I said, then the Browns scored 17 points in the third quarter and then 10 points in the fourth quarter to make it 27-0. So the Browns really whooped up on them, really good. But as I said, that was the final championship that the Cleveland Browns would wind up winning. Now, it's a little bit of a side note, because if you figure the Browns, this is the last championship the Browns won, but the Browns did wind up becoming the Baltimore Ravens, and then the Ravens wound up winning a couple Super Bowls. Of course, one of them was the 2000 Super Bowl when they beat the Giants. So then the Browns were awarded another team later on, but basically the city of Cleveland, for the Cleveland Browns, have not won a championship since 1964. So, this would be the 60th season. You got 1920, you got 2023. This will be the 60th season that since the Cleveland Browns, the 2023 season coming up will be since the Browns have won anything. So, the Cleveland Browns were very, very good back then. The Browns were good for a long time. And the Browns would wind up going back to the championship game again in 1965, where they would play the Green Bay Packers. This time the Packers would wind up winning 23-12. I have a cult burnout booming team like Dolphins, but they don't play each other often. Nope. That Cards had the tiebreaker head-to-head. Yep, yes they did. Yep. Cards won straight up already. Hall of Fame curse. 2 years in a row tied the Cards. Cardinals win the World Series. Yep, Cardinals won the World Series. Oh, yeah. Yes, they did. Had some good teams. Good old Bob Gibson had some good teams back then. Absolutely. And that was also coming to the end for the Yankees as well. Because, in the 40s and the 50s and in the early 60s, I think 64 was the last time. 65, was it 65? And then 66, 64 was the last was the last World Series for the Yankees, because in 65, I think it was the Twins and the Dodgers. 66, I think it was the Orioles and the Dodgers. And in 67, it was the Red Sox, Cardinals. 68 was the Tigers, and the Cardinals. 69 was my team, the Mets. So 1964 was also the last season that the Yankees went to the World Series until the late 70s. So they were starting to get old too. And with Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra and Elston Howard and so on and so on and so on, Roger Maris and all that, they started getting old, and they didn't replace them with good players either. So 64 was the last season. It was the first season for the decline of the New York Giants, but it was the last season, basically the last good season for the Yankees for a long time to come, right? Reds had no team to play, and they needed to create the Mets before the Bengals could be franchised. Absolutely. Well, that pretty much wraps up the 1964 New York Giants season, where they finished at 2-10-2. However, they would rebound in 1965, and Coach Ali Sherman, I do believe, became the coach of the year, because he took them from 2-10-2, and in 1965 they got all the way back up to 7-7. So, of course, after 65 they would go back down into the dumpster once again in 1966. But Giants 2-10-2, and this 1964 started the wilderness years for the Giants from 1964 to 1980. 2 winning seasons, no playoffs. So that wraps that up. I'll be back again tomorrow, right, Danny? I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1965 season for the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 41st season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.